All right, here we go. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition, episode 86 of the Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast, Mechanical Breakdown Series, Volume 23, breaking down the swing of former free agent and now Dodgers outfielder, center fielder. He's 31. He might not be a center fielder for much longer. Chris Taylor. And here to do that with me, as always, professional evaluator, successful business owner, former coach, friend, and co-host on what is a frigid day here in Florida, Jake Epstein. But he's not in Florida. He's in Denver. It's probably even more frigid there. Now, that is an open.
Oof, I think we covered it all. Yes. I know the East Coast is getting some nasty cold weather. That's for sure. We had some yesterday. We had a little snow yesterday, but it's clear and sunny today, so it'll melt off.
Well, Chris Taylor,
kind of a typical winter.
Chris Taylor, 31 years old. I guess we'll get right into it here. Oh, by the way, I want to ask you something though first. What do Daniel Murphy and Mike Napoli? This is kind of a trick question. What do they have in common? There's one thing that they have in common. Has nothing to do with on field. They both signed their free agent contracts over the holiday season. Why do I bring that up? Because Major League Baseball this week and the Players Association met and decided to discuss core economic principles on how to figure out and come to a deal and wrap up this drama as it pertains to the CBA, or what will be the new CBA. And my question is, and there's now people saying that spring training could be in peril and that spring training may not start until March or even mid-March. And my question is, with deals getting done in the past, free agent contracts, trades during the holiday season, why couldn't they meet during the holiday season? And my other question is, are you, Jake Epstein, afraid that Major League Baseball may not start on time this year? What is the feeling that you're getting?
Yeah, and my field doesn't mean much, but I do think it may be delayed a little bit just because there's really not a lot of movement happening. And
spring training delayed or regular season delayed?
Spring training delayed. I feel pitchers and catchers are a month away, from being there. And I don't know. There's been a lot of wasted time, kind of what you said, how nothing happens, during the holiday season, typically between, Thanksgiving and Christmas or New Year's. And I don't know. I don't have a great feeling that they're very close right now with what they're trying to accomplish. So now that could all be done in a week too. They could have 3 good negotiations. Both sides could know what they want, and they're just hemming and hawing, and then boom, we get there within a couple of days, and that could happen February 8th, and they just kind of pound it out. So you never know what's going to happen, but it's not a good feeling right now. But I think that's what labor stoppages are all about, right? It's not a cozy feeling where you think you're close all the time. Everybody waits until the very last second, and then they try to pound out a deal so that the fans, don't lose out on what they're, when the season starts, and they have to get players ample time. So it'll be a 11th hour kind of deal by the time it gets done.
I just don't understand how you don't meet over the holidays or how you just stop in December and say, okay, that's it. We'll meet again in January when you have a labor stoppage and you're trying to build up excitement with free agents and trades during the off season. I don't understand that.
I think it's just a long season, Jim. I do. I think, baseball season is really long.
But you know what, though? But it's a full-time job.
It is a full-time job.
I mean, I know it's a long season, but Rob Manfred's not out there. And Tony, what's his face, isn't out there. Tony Clark, they're not out there playing games every day.
Yeah.
I just don't understand how you take a month off. And also, too, I don't understand how you take a month off when the organizations are still operating. That, to me, is very confusing.
Yeah. Well, I think it was probably
questions we ponder over our coffee.
Yeah, it was strategy. We'll just push it back a little bit, get a little heated in there between the discussions, and see what happens in February.
Well, Chris Taylor, no matter what, when baseball does return, he will be with the Dodgers next year. He signed that free agent contract with Los Angeles right before the lockout happens. And with Chris Taylor, it's interesting. We have a question about this from JJ, and we'll get to it. And Scott, we'll get to your question as well. But what's interesting with Chris Taylor, and I'm going to ask you this just right off the bat here, he went from being kind of a fourth outfield type, if that, with Seattle. And then he went to the Dodgers and became what he is now, a high priced free agent, or was a high priced free agent, now a big name and a household name throughout Major League Baseball. So I wonder here with the Dodgers as his comparison to the Mariners, not just his numbers, because JJ brought up the numbers, but I want to bring up mechanical things that you saw with him, if any, and the changes he made from when he was with Seattle to the Dodgers that made that complete jump. Or was it just the case of, well, he just one day clicked and he figured it out?
Yeah, I don't have, really enough video of him with Seattle. I guess that's probably the linchpin behind that question, is I don't know what he looked like. I do know that he has adjusted his stride. Like, that was a big thing, his style, if you will, or his rhythm and timing. So, that was a big part of it. I think he got a chance to play more. He got a chance to play, get more at bats instead of, I don't know how many at bats he got, in Seattle. I think that the most at bats he had were, 135 at bats or something like that, 136 at bats. So, he was young. He didn't get a lot of playing time there. And I think when you get into a role where, whether it's left field, center field, he played some shortstop, he played some, I don't know if he played second base or not, but, he played a lot of different positions, but he was getting consistent at bats. And I think anytime you get consistent at bats, or as a player, you're getting consistent playing time, you're going to relax. You're not going to put stress, over every at bat that you have. Like, I got to get a hit. I'm only, I'm playing every third day. It's very difficult to do. So, I think the combination of him just being in a comfortable environment, plus a much better hitter's ballpark, Los Angeles, Dodger Stadium versus, Seattle, Safeco, or is it still called? I don't know if it's still called Safeco, but anyway,
T-Mobile
better
Park.
environment, better surrounding cast of hitters. All of that's going to make to, having more success in the batter's box and on the field.
We bring up StatCast statistics a lot on the show, especially during this Mechanical Breakdown series chapter of free agents. And with Chris Taylor, I'm looking at some of his numbers now. None of them stick out as being in the top 1%, top 5% in the league. Everything is pretty much across the board average. Exit velocity last season, a full season, 2021, 88.2. And his launch angle was 17.4. Now you take that launch angle, compare it to what it was in 2019, it was 13.8, 18, 16.4. But then it gets a little bit more fuzzy. In 2017, it was 12.2, 16, 10.3, and in 15, it was 14.8. But there was a couple of years there where it was under 13, that launch angle. And I look at his swing, and it looks a little bit similar to a Cody Bellinger in that it's a little bit steep. Did his swing just progressively get steeper when he went to the Dodgers? Did he try to lift the ball and get the ball in the air more? Because that's what it seems like to me, not just based off the numbers, but what I see in his swing.
Yeah, no, he's definitely more of a guy that's trying to hit the bottom of the ball. The swing we're going to look at today is, obviously a great swing because it was a home run. But yes, he swings under a decent amount of pitches. That may have been, one of his thought processes. I'm going to try to get under pitches a little bit more. I'm going to get to the bottom half. Again, you go in there, Justin Turner, one of my favorite dudes. One of his things but he doesn't have that swing where he drops his barrel. But Turner's thought process is, I'm going to try to hit it out in front. And I'm going to try to hit the bottom of it.
Right.
Okay. So that's a really good thing. It's a good goal to have. But what's the process of doing that? One process is, I'm just going to be flat, with my attack angle, meaning he's going to swing down longer and then try to hit the bottom of the ball as his barrel starts to flatten out. Or the other process is, I'm going to try to drop my barrel so that I'm definitely under, and then all I do is come up, and sometimes I'm going to top it and sometimes I'm not. So those are two different ways of doing it. Maybe they have the same process, maybe they both are trying to hit the bottom of the ball. Turner just has a different approach to doing that, where Taylor has more of a, I'm going to try to get my barrel underneath a little bit quicker, a little bit deeper in the zone, so I can get to the bottom of the ball sooner. Looking at his stats, I don't know how that correlates. What was his average launch? And again, average launch angle to me, I don't know if I put a lot of, thought into it, because you could have a really steep swing, meaning you can swing up a lot and drop your barrel, and you can still hit a lot of ground balls to the pull side. Like, that's very, very common. So, that's a result. Now, maybe he's, trying to, make an adjustment and get underneath stuff. But what was his average launch angle in 2017? Do you have that?
Yes, it was 12.2. Now, the lowest of his career was 16. That was 10.3, but 12.2 was the second. Actually, I don't count 2020.
So that was his highest. He almost hit 290 that year. So he had 290. That was his best year. He had 290 with 21 home runs.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, he hit 35 points less than that, roughly 34 points less than that, with the same amount of home runs. Okay, so
do you sacrifice the couple of home runs for a flatter swing?
No, he still had more home runs in 17.
Okay, I'm looking at the wrong statistics.
In less at bats. So, it's what it is. You can tear apart different numbers and see different things. But, I definitely have seen his barrel start to get under. He fouls a lot more pitches straight back and up to the right on fastballs, which is, that's what I noticed that last year. Like, he had a big hit last year, which we're going to look at, but it wasn't like a crazy, insane year. He was he was very good at the right times. And that's why he's a household name. They're in the playoffs all the time. I think if Chris Taylor played for the Cincinnati Reds, or played for the Cleveland Indians, or played for the Oakland A's, I think he wouldn't be the household name he is playing for the Dodgers and getting all those postseason at bats.
You bring up a great point about 2017, though. I'm looking at some of his other numbers. His isolated power, again, a number that I absolutely love, was 208. And for those who don't know, isolated power takes into account doubles, triples, extra base hits, home runs, etc. It was 208, the highest of his career. Last year, 183. His batting average on balls in play, 2017, second highest behind 2014, although he only played in 47 games in 2014. In 2017, first season again with the Dodgers, his batting average on balls in play, I don't put too much stock into this, but it was 361, second highest of his career. 288 batting average that year, like you said, highest of his career. On base percentage, 354, highest of his career, and actually second highest of his career. And his slugging 496, that was the highest of his career in 2017. So all those numbers, they trumped 2021, 2021's numbers. And the things that stick out to me, the on-base percentage, the slugging, and the isolated power as it relates to what we were just discussing.
Yeah, I think he's a Dodger, man. I think he's in a good place. I think he's in a comfortable place. I think his real value is his being he's a quality teammate. Guys like him. He plays multiple positions. He can play the infield and he can play the outfield.
Right.
And he's been sustainable the last few years. So that's why he's, quote unquote, top free agent. Yeah. I don't think he's a guy that's going to carry your team. He's not offensively. You're not going to plug him into the 3, 4, and 5 spot and let him carry your RBI. He's not going to have 100 and something RBIs. But he's going to do all the little things that make your club win. And that sometimes is more versatile than a guy that just drives and runs, that isn't a good defender, that can't steal a base, that can't go first to third. I think there's a lot of intangibles that Chris Taylor has. He's a great overall player. I love the fact that he's just an average sized guy. He is not a freak, he's got great ability, but he's not a physical, specimen out there that, fills up his uniform and 240 pounds of muscle. He's just kind of an old school guy. Like, you look at him and that's the way he plays. Like, you look at the guys from the 50s that just got after it, in different positions and played hard. And I don't know. He's a guy that I would love to have in a lineup. What did he sign for? What was his number?
It was how much he was a fifth round draft selection in 2012 out of Virginia, but he signed for let's see here, I'm pulling it up. They call me Jimmy Prep.
You can edit.
4 years.
I don't mean what did he sign for out of college or high school? Like what was
I know that.
new
I'm
deal
looking
with
at.
him?
Yeah, I'm looking
Oh.
at it. I don't care what he signed for out of college. I don't care what
Oh,
his
okay.
stupid signing
Well,
bonus
he's a
was.
fifth rounder. He made
He could
like
have fucking gotten a bag of
112,000.
peanuts. I could give a shit. 4 years, 60 million. 2026 club option. So annual average
50.
value, average annual value, whatever it is, 15 million. Not a bad deal.
No,
I think he
and I
probably
think
knew too.
that's
He plays for the Dodgers, and that certainly that helps rather than going on a free agent tour and having, a certain, I don't know, lower market team call you and trying to win over your services.
I
Not that there's
think
anything
he's gonna
wrong
play
with
for
that, but
he's going to make a ton of money. I think that's a good value for both sides.
yeah.
And I think he's definitely worth that for his postseason experience. It's like Kike, right? That's what they paid for, postseason experience, right? It's a big, big thing, and the Dodgers are there every single year.
See, now you pushed me, and now I'm trying to find his college signing bonus.
Okay.
I don't
think anybody cares about that.
I don't think I'm going to find it either.
So he was out of Virginia. He signed as a college guy.
Yeah, I think he played with a friend of mine, a former American Legion teammate that I had who went to Virginia. His name was Steve Bruno. Good player. New Jersey guy. Good player. Very good player. He was a shortstop.
Bruno,
he got drafted by the Cubs, actually. I met with this was like 6 years ago. I met with Steve. He was playing in Daytona at the time when that was the Cubs Advanced Day affiliate. This was years ago, and we met. We had some drinks and cigars, and we were talking. But I think he played with Chris Taylor, Steve Bruno.
Yeah. That's where I thought you were going with the Mike Napoli thing. I played with Nap in short season my first year after I signed. He was an 18-year-old kid from Naples, Florida, not Italy. Maybe from Italy too.
Although he could.
Yeah. I mean, he's
Napoli.
But he
said he's from Naples,
so
Italy.
Funny.
I think Napoli. I think of cannoli, like a cannoli in my head. Do you ever meet somebody with a name that you think of like a food? Like I know a guy who his last name is Lafredo. And I think of pasta sauce, Alfredo.
Yeah. Well, there was that joke.
You hate Italians. You hate Italians today. What's going on?
Italians the most.
You didn't like Bruno. You didn't.
Yes, I did love Bruno. So Tommy Lasorda. Did you ever hear the Tommy Lasorda jersey?
See, that sounds like lasagna. I think of lasagna when I think of Tommy.
So there was so that was the joke. Like there was, I don't know what year this was, probably in the 80s sometime, but they made a jersey instead of Lasorda. It said lasagna, and it had the number 2. I think he wore number 2. Yeah. And this is when Tommy would coach third base. And so he went out there. Yeah, it was just in his locker. Somebody pulled a prank on him, took his regular jersey out, put the lasagna one in, and he went out there and coached third base for a few innings with a jersey that said lasagna instead of Lasorda. It was awesome.
Yeah, he was.
So my dad always referred to him as Tommy Lasagna after that.
He always fought the Philly fanatic. Always Lasorda versus the fanatic.
Yeah, he was a beauty. He coached my dad when my dad was in high school on this Dodger rookie team, or maybe it was a college team. Like Joe Morgan, I think I don't know if Joe Morgan was on that one too. But anyway, it was like they wanted him to sign with the Dodgers. My dad, he chose the Orioles. It was a bad mistake. But so he and Lasorda were always friends. So every time, I don't know if I've told this story, but we'd go to spring training. I was a kid, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years old. We'd go there. We'd always go to Dodger Town, and we'd go to all the different stops. My dad could see all his old buddies, and he'd always see Lasorda, and Tommy would always say, "Hey, Mike, how's it going? How's your dad doing?" Because
you told this story. We go ahead.
Right, yeah. And he was like, "Tommy, my dad's been dead for like 20 years." I was like, "Oh man, he was a good guy." And then the next year, same thing. "How's your dad doing?" "Tommy, he's still dead. He's still dead." So you never know, man. Yeah, people have the same tick.
Can you go into that? I'm curious now. Can you go into that story of why it was a mistake he signed with the Orioles?
Yeah, so my dad was pretty much the number one. It was the year before the draft, so 64. It was 65 the first year of the draft. 60, so it was like, I think it was 64, and you were essentially just a free agent, right? Like you could sign with anybody coming out of college. And he was an All-American. I think he hit 400, over 400 at Cal. Like he was big and physical compared to most people at that time. And so he was one of the top, if not one of the, the top guy coming out of college for the draft. So the two best teams at that time were the Orioles, who were like always in the World Series, right?
Yeah.
Brooks Robinson, Frank Robinson was there.
Boy, how times have changed.
Jim Palmer. Yeah, I mean, they were good. And then the Dodgers was kind of his home team, and the Dodgers were good too, but the Dodgers were like a speed team. They were fast. It was National League. You know, they were a lot of hit and run, where the Orioles were like Boog Powell, right? Like I said, you know, Frank Robinson, they were guys that hit a lot of home runs. So
yeah, they were
my
big
dad
bruisers.
thought that yeah, my dad was like, well, I definitely fit that mold, right? I'm a bigger guy. Well, the problem was, you know, Boog Powell wasn't going anywhere. So my dad, you know, goes to A-ball, and he's like player of the year in the California League his first year. And then he skips AA, goes to AAA, the International League. I think he gets the Triple Crown that year, you know, his second year. So 65. So then they bring him, or 66, then they bring him up to the big leagues in spring training, and Boog Powell's playing first base, who's the man, right? And my dad's got nowhere to go. They try to make him into an outfielder, and he can't see, like he can't read fly balls. You know, he's got terrible vision, right? So they sent him back down after spring training to AAA, and he's like, "This, I just, you know, I was just the guy at the International League. Why am I doing this again?" And so he kind of quit and forced a trade because he had nowhere to go, and that's when he ended up with Senators, which, you know, was a blessing, you know, to play for Ted Williams, but it was also the worst team in baseball at the time when he got traded there in 67, right? They were awful. So, you know, in hindsight, he would always say, I should have signed with the Dodgers. Like I would have had a much easier way to the big leagues.
Well, those were the golden years of scouting, weren't they? It was just kind of a free for all. You were basically almost like a college recruiter in a way. What a college recruiter would be today.
Yeah.
You just try to sign, you scout guys and you try to sign them. Do your best.
Yeah. I mean, I remember talking to Jerry Weinstein, who's, you know, he's a legendary. He just got inducted to, I don't know if he got inducted in the ABC Hall of Fame or he got a big award, but Jerry's, I mean, legendary, you know, junior college coach in Sac City, been in Major League Baseball for 30 years or 40 years now. He's a catching instructor with the Rockies. Anyway, Jerry's the best, right? So I remember Jerry said, "Your dad was the greatest 14-year-old player I have ever seen in my life." Like, because he grew up in LA about the same time. And he was. My dad was like this legendary, like massive 14, 15-year-old. And he would just drive. He had like a little scooter. He didn't have a license. He had like this little motorbike, and he would drive all over. And people would be like, "Hey, can you come pitch for us?" Because he really was a pitcher. He threw like 90 miles an hour when he was 15 or 16. Wow. And then he blew out his arm his junior year in the bullpen warming up. And there wasn't anything to do with it. So then he ended up playing football. And
so your dad was very big for his age.
He was big.
Is that right? So he was like Andy Reid. You ever see Andy Reid when he was like 13?
No.
Oh my, the guy was huge. I mean, he was tall and just, I mean, he was huge.
Yeah.
They've showed video highlights of it on TV. Yeah, that's right. That's what I think of when I think of your dad. By the way, if your dad didn't force a trade, did he know Ted Williams before he forced the trade? No. So if he didn't force that trade, you realize we wouldn't be sitting here doing this right now. I mean, that's the truth, right? It's funny how the dominoes fall and how how life is. Oh God.
Yeah. I mean, I could be
facetiously
CEO of Tesla right now if that was the case.
You could. That's true. That's true. You wouldn't be.
You don't know. You know. Maybe I would have been, the vice chancellor. Never mind.
Maybe you would have been the president of the United States.
Yeah, right. I would have gone into politics. I would have had a bad swing when I was 13. Yeah, I remember the first day. I remember exactly where I was when my dad put the bat on my shoulder and told me to do the torque drill. Told me to, turn my hips and turn my shoulders before my hands came. I'll never forget where I was. It was Laguna Niguel. It was this random ballpark in Laguna Niguel, California. It was the first time I put the bat on the side of my shoulder. He's like, "I want you to turn this first instead of just swinging."
And then
otherwise,
and then the dominoes just fell, right?
Yeah.
That was it. And here you are, however many years later, doing a podcast with Jim. Thanks, Dad.
All right, let's do this. What are we doing? Are we
Thanks,
doing a
Dad.
question, or am I getting after the analysis yet?
Before we do the analysis, let's get to JJ's question first, because it does pertain to Chris Taylor. interesting.
Shawnee versus the world.
Yes. This comes from JJ, sent to us via Jingle Podcast 21@gmail.com. I was wondering, Jim and Jake, if Jake could do a then and now analysis of Chris Taylor. I'm not sure he could, but before Taylor was acquired by the Dodgers in 2016, he was a 240 hitter in 233 at bats and no home runs with the Mariners. Kind of discussed that. In 2017, he hit 288, 21 home runs with the Dodgers. What did Taylor change mechanically from his time with the Mariners and in 2017 with the Dodgers, contributing to what he has been as a hitter since? That is from JJ, sent to us via Jimbo Podcast 21@gmail.com. Scott, we will get to your question at the end of the show.
Yes, all of this information, Jim, would have been worthwhile before we started the podcast today. And I could have tried to get a video of Chris Taylor.
I know.
Sorry,
everybody.
But you can't.
I dropped the ball on this one.
MLB.com is like shut down all their video library.
Yeah. So Baseball Savant doesn't even have the pictures of the guys anymore.
Yeah.
But what a bunch of petty little girls.
Yeah, to find video clips. But in my thinking, I don't know if this is right or not, but in my thinking, it is the rhythm. Like, he developed a much bigger leg kick, a much earlier, slower rhythm. Like, he's going to generate a ton more ground force with this. With that, as he, increasing his bat speed and exit velocity a ton, probably a few notches, probably, 2 miles an hour of bat speed, 5-6 mile an hour of exit velocity. Would that change? But again, I don't know for certain what his rhythm and what his stride looked like before. But that would be my guess, getting with Justin Turner and kind of seeing what he was doing. He was kind of the first guy Turner totally changed his career, right? From the Mets to the Dodgers. And that was the thing. He's like, I need to hit balls out of the park a little bit more. I need to sit down and back. I need to have a bigger weight shift. I need to get to the bottom of the ball. I think that was, if I were to guess on what Taylor did, that would definitely be the mindset, of being with that team. And that happens, players. I remember when Barry Bonds played with the Giants, all of a sudden the Giants would bring these guys up. Everybody looked like Barry Bonds. Everybody had the same stance. They tried to do that same hitch, little hand hitch that he had. Emulation is the greatest form of flattery, and I think that was probably the case with Justin Turner. I don't know what Justin Turner's stats were around 2016, 15, 16, 17, but it may have been the same time he made that change or a little bit after. And Taylor's like, you know what? We're kind of same size guys. We're not huge guys. Maybe I should try this. And then it worked out. So if I were to make an assumption, that would be it.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think?
But if I could find some old Seattle video, I could tell you for sure.
Yeah, I really dropped the ball on that one. I'm sorry, everybody.
Yeah. All it takes is an email, Jim.
I know. I'm sorry. My bad, yo. All right. I pulled up the Chris Taylor video on my end. I'm ready to go if you are. So let's get this thing rolling.
I just typed in Chris Taylor, swinging with the Mariners, and nothing is coming up.
Yeah. So there.
But I'll search that later. Maybe we can address that next week, and then when we first start about that.
You know what? I'll add that to my show notes for next week.
Yeah, good deal. Okay, so I'm ready. You ready?
Yes.
Let's rock and roll. So, Chris, this was the home run heard around the world, right? During the playoffs.
Yeah, really.
Year. I believe this was the wild card home run. Is that Yachty behind the plate?
Yes.
Looks like Yachty, doesn't it? This was that line drive home run. I wish it told us well, we can figure it out because I have such fancy tools here. But if we look at the trajectory of this pitch or this exit. So yeah, it was a low launch angle. So I have it right around 22 degrees, that launch angle, 420 feet. This was a bullet to I thought it was towards left center, maybe even more towards center, but looking at his bat angle, it looks like it'd be more towards left center. But anyway, just a fantastic swing, right? You're hitting at 110.7 miles an hour, 420 feet. That's probably going to go most places, except for the new Camden Yards. They moved the fences back. Do you see that?
I didn't this year.
Yeah, in left field, I think they moved it back like 20 something feet, 26 feet, and then they were raising the wall too. Only about 20 years too late, I would say, for that ballpark. But anyway, so let's go through to Taylor. If we look at his stride, he does such a great job of controlling that stride. That's a pretty big stride. Like his front knee is almost coming up to his back hip flexor or so. Like that's a pretty good leg kick. But watch what his hands do and how slow it is as he kind of loads his back shoulder up. So if you look at his back elbow, remember when you were in Little League and your coach was like, get your back elbow up? It's really not a bad thing. For some reason now it is, but it has to slot. But if you load the back elbow up, wow, look at this angle at toe touch. So I'm at toe touch, Jimmy, between his back shoulder and his front shoulder. I mean, that is some serious depth, right? And if we put, if you look at where his belt is facing too, I mean, this guy is built for torque. Remember we talked about guys that are a little bit more wiry. Griffey had a ton of stretch and torque too, versus we looked at other guys like Correa is a bigger guy. Correa only had 28 or 30 degrees of separation here. Taylor's got 41. Okay. That's a lot. Okay. That's on the high end. And that's an athletic move. Now, the more aggressive you are with this move, and the more you open up this front knee at heel plant, the more susceptible you are for breaking pitches. But who cares if you're looking for a fastball because you're ahead in the count? You got to sell out. I just listened to this Tony Gwynn and Ted Williams interview.
Stop.
Did you see that?
Go ahead. I'll tell you at the end. Go ahead.
Yeah, and he was just saying guessing. He's like, just guess, get a good pitch to hit and guess. He used the G word, which is like terrible, but it's the same as anticipation. It's the same as having a plan. And he's like, guess. And if the pitch isn't in that zone, take it. Who cares? That's why you get 3 strikes, and it's just, he said it so nonchalant that why don't we do that? Why do we think we have to cover every pitch all the time? Because we don't. Anyway, so maybe old Taylor here is looking for a fastball, right? So he's letting his front hip go, but he's keeping his hands back pretty well. His hands are launching from a good position. I always look for it to be somewhere around the right or the ear. Depends if you're right-handed or left-handed, but at his right ear. Typically, most players are right at the ear, so maybe 2 inches higher than where his are. And then the low point would be kind of the chin. So he's kind of right in the middle of that gap where he's launching his hands from. Typically, players that launch from a lower position are better low ball hitters. Mm-hmm. If we look at him, you can see how the hands, I mean, you can say to yourself, look how far back his hands are, but they're really not. I mean, he has a big bend in his left arm. It's probably just a 100-degree angle or so in there. He's not pushing his hands back a ton. Okay. But as he goes to rotate, look how that bat stays kind of vertical here. His top hand is facing forward. His top hand's vertical. The knob's in front of the back elbow. Okay. There's no bad drag. This is all turn right here, right? There's no hand manipulation yet, one way or the other. Then once he gets to his short approach here, now he's going to start to build some space between his lead forearm. Okay. If he does that earlier, so you want to not drop your barrel quite as much, all you do is get right to here. Here's some gold for all those listening. As Shooter McGavin once said, here's a free lesson. Sorry, it's one of my favorite movies. Tell me you know Shooter McGavin. Here's a free lesson. Remember, he closes his eyes and knocks the putt in. Yes. But the free lesson is the sooner you start to use your lead arm. Okay, so his is a little bit late here. See how his forearm is right next to Dodgers as he's turning? Okay, and then he gets, when do we see separation between that Velcro strap on his left bicep and the Dodgers logo? When is it? We see how we still don't see it yet. Now we start to see separation. If he starts that separation a couple frames sooner, his barrel would stay up a little bit longer. Okay, that's pretty cool. Like that's a very simple thing he could do. So if we look at this pitch, it's a fastball. It's a 4-degree downslope. You can see here, I'm bringing his barrel to about his front knee, Jimmy, just so you can follow along. His barrel's underneath here. Okay, so his barrel's here. So if he were to hit the ball there at his front knee, he would foul it straight back. Okay, now if his barrel, my line was not good. I'm going to redraw that. Sorry. That ball was not 4 degrees. It was probably a little bit coming down a little bit more than that. So let me redraw this.
Well, while you do that, I just want to say that it goes to your point, his barrel. It is underneath the ball, what you said earlier. You're exactly right.
Yeah, slightly. I mean, it's not a ton,
Mm-hmm.
right? Actually, so I redrew this
line. He's trying to hit the bottom of the ball.
Trying to hit the bottom of the ball. So actually, this is like a perfect amount. So that line I redrew is actually better. So now you can see his barrel is pretty much on, at about his front shin. He could probably get some barrel on that. He could definitely get barrel at his front toes. And then he can obviously get barrel where he hit it a few inches in front of his front toes. So this was really good. This was actually a very high quality swing, and then he comes off. So in a good power V position, it looks like Betts. I mean, all these Dodgers look the same, I will say, in their extension position. Betts looks just like that as he extends through. The legs look exactly the same. Really cool. Maybe they're onto something here with guys that they're getting. But to me, this is a great swing on a pitch, mid-thigh, right? So he gets to that pitch. That's why it's important that line I drew, I was off by just a couple degrees. So I drew that pitch plane line at 4 degrees instead of 6, and it made it look like his barrel was going to be under quite a bit. But when I redrew it on the right, trajectory, it was like, okay, that's right where he is. So it's very important when we're drawing those lines to put him in the right position, especially when like you're scouting players or you're working with players. Yeah, you want to make sure you're giving him the right information. So he's got a funny follow through, right? If we go all the way to his follow through, some people look at that and be like, good Lord. In fact, if we play this swing all the way through, of course it's in slow motion, but and all you saw was that follow through. You're like, did he get fooled?
Yeah.
Did he lunge on his front leg? But this is a pretty textbook swing. It really is. In fact, let me see if I can pull. I'm going to pause the video here. I'm going to see if I can pull a Betts swing, see if I have one in the library.
I think their follow through is like literally the same. And how they end is, why does the knee do that? The back knee? Is it just everything just unwinding and it's just kind of that momentum with the legs and the ground force? Oh, that's what I'm assuming.
For him at the end, I think he's just, that's him. He's, he's trying to run.
Okay.
That would be my, that would be my guess. Yeah, I mean, follow throughs are follow throughs. Okay, so I was able to find it. Hopefully it comes through the right way. Sometimes they don't when I do this in the middle of an annotation. All right. So Taylor on the left. Okay. Toe touch. I'll bring him Betts' videos a little bit different. So, that's roughly the same part of the swing. I'm thinking Betts' pitch is probably a little bit higher, but as you look at their legs, they're almost identical here.
This is, by the way, this is better on the YouTube side, our YouTube page. Go ahead.
Yeah, you definitely need to watch this on the YouTube. If you're not watching this on the YouTube page, then
you're a dork.
Well, yeah, you don't know what's really happening. So again, I'm matching these guys up. So similar with their positions. Okay. Their legs, Betts gets a little bit more off his back leg. Maybe his weight shift was a little different. Okay. You can see Taylor hits his a little bit more out in front, but watch the finish. Like that's as they get through with their right arm. Okay, you watch that. Look at that extension Betts has with his right arm, but notice how his right hand isn't flipping over.
Mm-hmm.
That's really good. So if I bring them to the power V position, their right hand, this is so hard. I'm trying to get my daughter to do this. This right hand is still palm up. So we've released the barrel, but we haven't turned that right. We've talked about, the forearms, right? Keeping that space in the forearms. Look at both of these guys here. Okay. So again, you can have different style, you can be different players, but from right about here, I'm going to bring both these guys to the same position. Okay. So or even the approach, I always say short approach, but we don't have Betts' short approach here. But from here, and you can see, Betts' his hands are higher here. But from here, all the way through extension, that's your swing plane, right? That's when your barrel's getting to the zone. Notice how his barrel stays underneath that ball, even though he hits the back of the ball. Notice how his barrel stays underneath that launch angle so that he doesn't flip his wrist or swing up too much to hit the top of it. He still swung up, but if you swing up too much, then you end up topping that ball. You should get backspin on. So same thing here, as Taylor hits through this ball, notice how his right hand stays very, very still, and his thumb stays still through contact. So pretty cool. I mean, those are two pretty great athletes, right? And two pretty great hitters. that look almost exactly the same through contact. That's all I have to say about that, Jim.
I'm watching the point of contact with Taylor, and it's great.
Yeah. Wait till you see the final one I just did too. You'll like. I mean, they're very, very similar.
Yeah. What do you think the Dodgers are onto? You alluded to that earlier. What do you think they're onto?
What'd you say?
What do you think the Dodgers? You alluded to that this earlier. What do you think the Dodgers are onto with finding hitters that have very similar swings? What are they seeing that Taylor and Mookie Betts have a very similar swing? Quite frankly, also have a very similar finish as well.
Yeah, could be coincidence, or they could have a sharp person that maybe sees certain similarities with successful hitters, and they piece it together. Maybe they have somebody that's teaching those players those different positions too. Right. I mean, it could be. I mean, that would be the number one thing would be development, right? You have a coaching staff or a scouting department that sees things, and then most importantly, they're able to reproduce those and allow hitters to kind of maximize their ability. That's what any player development department wants to do. So they're doing something right.
Seems like I'm sorry. It seems like I just want to point this out too, see if you agree. It seems like all Dodgers hitters at the major league level and the guys that come up. I'm going to give like Keibert Ruiz, for example, now with the Nationals. When he came up, they're all loose, very loose hitters. There's no stiffness in their swing, their load, their extension. There's no stiffness. It's all just very loose. Is that? Yeah. I mean, do you see that? Is there
maybe they're letting guys be themselves. In the lower minor leagues, they're not overcoaching. Possibly they're letting them fail or not fail. Using why did we draft this guy? Maybe because he's loose. Maybe because he's smooth. And they're not taking that away. So fine line between, changing players in the minor leagues and letting them keep their rhythm. When I work with players, I try to focus on the mechanical part, launch to extension. And then I let them wrap their own rhythm and stride and leg kick and stance. I try to let them wrap that around it. So
those are your two pillars, is what you're saying.
The two. Yeah, because you can't do one without the other. You can't be stiff and just be, launch to contact. Like, you won't have any rhythm or fluidity or adjustability in the swing. But I also don't want to change something that's natural to a player. So I like to use both. I like to use their natural stuff. And then if there's a spot in the swing, it's very different. I'm talking about working with a 13-year-old, not a 24-year-old. Working with a 24-year-old, they're probably pretty mechanically sound, where we're just trying to adjust swing plane things, keep the barrel up longer or get it under more or extend lower, very, things to just make them better. But with a young player, that needs almost a mechanical remake because they have a catastrophic issue with their swing. I just remove all the style, put the bat here, get your feet here, focus on this move from here to here, or short approach to contact, or from launch to contact, or launch to extension. And then once they prove to me that they can do that anytime they want, then I'll say, okay, let's build in some rhythm, man. Let's see what's comfortable for you. Let's wrap it around. And then I have, a way of doing that makes it, easy, and without suggesting, hey, try this. I say, stand like this and then swing. Let's see what happens. And then they'll start to develop their own style. And I don't have to guess, are they a leg kick person? Are they a glide person? Do they want an open stance? Do they like a square stance? Do they like to load their shoulder? I don't have to worry about that because their body's going to just kind of do what's comfortable for them. And then as long as it wraps around the good mechanics, I'm good to go. And so are they.
So for everybody listening, I hope people
back to the Dodgers, though. Sorry to cut you off, Jim, because I wanted to say this. I really like almost every Dodger swing. Bellinger, I don't like, he strides late, and I think that's why he rushes everything, right? Yeah. But I'll tell you what, I love Max Muncy's swing. I liked Seager's swing. I loved it, actually, right? I love Justin Turner's swing. I loved Kike's swing. I like Taylor's swing. Betts is pretty darn good. I mean, they're doing something. Their hitters are all very, very similar, I would say, except for Bellinger. He's kind of the odd man out in terms of stride rhythm and what he's doing. But Bellinger is also a very feel-oriented guy. He's a very athletic guy. and he may not, want to change or buy into maybe what the other guys are doing.
So really what you're saying is that teams should be studying the Dodgers more.
I don't think that's a bad idea. I think they are.
Yeah.
And it's not just about front office, right? It's
No.
not just about, maybe it is and finding the right players, but maybe what those players are doing and why they're successful. Breaking it down to another organic level.
Well, I'm looking at Bet's launch angle. I'm just curious. It was 18.9 last year.
Mm-hmm.
Chris Taylor's.
And he's definitely started to drop his barrel more than he used to as well. But if you watch him take BP, he doesn't. Like, he tries to stay on top in BP. You'll see Betts almost like swing down in BP. So again, everyone's trying to do their thing. That was one of my favorite graphics, right? A few years ago when Betts was Betts and Yelich. Remember when they were in the MVP race?
Mm-hmm.
They were both. Oh no, it was Bellinger. I'm sorry, it wasn't.
Yeah,
Betts, it was Bellinger. And Bellinger's launch angle was like, I don't know, 16, and Yelich's average launch angle was like 6.
Mm-hmm.
But they both had 40 home runs, and they both were hitting like 310. It was like, they were almost identical with two different really philosophies and exit velocities. And once I saw that stat, I'm like, okay, to each their own. Launch angle could lead to a lot of rollovers too, or guys that swing down too much could also cut. If they're early all the time, they'll just cut the bottom of the ball.
You know what I think the Dodgers do really well? Again, I'm guessing here. I'm just whatever. But I think they. What? Go ahead.
No, that's like, I'm just guessing. I'm making
guessing.
Something up.
They're very. You notice they're a very athletic team.
Yeah.
They have a lot of athletes.
Yeah.
Like Muncy can play pretty much any position.
That's not a guess, Jim. That was a great comment.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But
they're athletic.
They're very athletic. Huge. They don't have a set plan in stone as to, okay, the third baseman has to be a potential 30 to 35 home run guy, above average power.
Mm-hmm.
The shortstop doesn't have it's with the exception. I think what they do is my philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
They streamline everything up the middle, and then they build out, which means if you're streamlining up the middle, you're getting athletes, you're acquiring athletes, and they're just streamlining them up the middle, and then they're working their way out. If they can't play or if they have a center fielder who's more athletic, slightly more athletic, like Chris Taylor, for example, than maybe a Mookie Betts, or I don't know, Muncy can't play shortstop.
Even they had that kid Gavin,
play second base. Gavin Lutz.
They tried to make him into an outfielder, right?
So you get my point.
Mm-hmm.
You're welcome, everybody. This is an educational show today from both of us.
Yeah.
More so
you.
I
mean, it was kind of cool. It was more of a Dodgers breakdown than just a Chris Taylor breakdown.
Well, that's what it is. That's what we got. By the way, I want to mention with the Ted Williams video when I said no way. I did the same thing earlier in the week. I logged onto YouTube, and YouTube, I was in my account. So when you're logged in, for those who don't know, whatever, sorry, but when you're on YouTube, you have your own account, and they give you suggestions. Well, they suggested to me to watch Ted Williams and Tony Gwynn talk hitting, right? It was when they were sitting down, and Tony Gwynn was in the they were in the shirt and tie, and they were just kind of I think Bob Costas was in that as well.
Yes, he was a really young Bob Costas.
Right. I was watching that as well. So look at that. Two amigos.
That was a good little clip.
Going about their week, watching the same thing.
So, pretty good hitters there too.
Oh, it was great. It was so informal. It was great.
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody should watch it if you're into baseball, if you want to be in baseball. Let's get to Scott's question here before we wrap up. Scott from Newark, New Jersey, first time writing in from what I remember. Maybe it's not. But anyway, he writes to us via jimbopodcast21@gmail.com. Scott writes, Jim and Jake, I hope you guys had a great new year. My question for Jake is, what does he think is going to be the next hitting trend in 2022 as it relates to fundamentals and new technology? It's my first time writing in. Thank you. Okay, there you go. It's his first time writing in. He said it. Thank you in advance. And that's from Scott, Newark, New Jersey, sent to us via jimbopodcast21@gmail.com. Great question.
Yeah, and who knows? I think at the big league level, I think it's going to be, I don't know if it's going to be a conscious bat vertical angle adjustment so that our bat vertical angle is not dropping as much. But I think it's going to be about trying to handle, 3 and 4 degree trajectory, high spin rate fastballs at the belt. I think that's where guys are going to spend a little bit more time in the off season working on. I think during the season, they're going to work on that as well. So from a major league standpoint, that's probably where it is. And like I said before, everything goes in trends. And after the hitters catch up to that in the next 2 years, maybe, then the pitchers are going to start adding more depth again, somehow, whatever it is, whether it's, more of a sinker, more maybe a different arm slot, to make the ball, move, a little bit more down, maybe a little bit more side to side. But I think now we're in a pitching revolution where guys are throwing really hard. Everybody throws 95 to 100. And I think, there's going to be an emphasis to try to stay on top, because if you're going to hit a pitch, it's going to be a fastball, right? If you're going to hit if you're throwing a 90-mile-an-hour slider, good luck. Like, that's going to be a really hard pitch to hit, right? So baseball right now is about, what it's like? It's like the old game Battleship, where it's like the submarine or those boats are just out in the middle of nowhere and you're guessing, like, B7, like, oh, I don't know if I hit, but that's kind of what hitting is. Once you zero in on what that pitcher's throwing and where the head ship is, now you can really go to town. But if you're up there looking for a 100-mile-an-hour fastball and a 90-mile-an-hour slider, you're going to have no chance. You have to stick to one of those pitches. And the one that you're probably going to hit more consistently, as crazy as it sounds, might be that 98 to 100-mile-an-hour fastball if you have the swing to do it.
I'm laughing because when I was 4, when I was an only child, this is before my sister was born, I had a babysitter. She was my babysitter from the time I was born to when I was 4. Her name was Debbie. We used to play the game Battleship. She taught me how to play when I was 4 because it was very simple. And she used to call out a number, and if it hit the ship, I would move the ship and say miss. And she'd just look at me like, what's wrong with you?
I know what you're doing, Jim.
I know. She's like, did you move that? I'd be like, no. no.
That's good. We'll have to have a Battleship edition.
Oh, I know. Yeah, we'll break down how to play Battleship on the show. That'll be the title of episode 100.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're running out of time, but you made some good points there. I guess I'll save those questions that I had for next week because I do wonder something about the sinker, because sinkers, I know an organization that no longer lets their pitchers throw 2-seam fastballs.
Crazy.
Whatever. Yes.
Right.
And I have a hitting question as it relates to the 2-seam fastball and sinker. Again, 2-seam fastballs, more run. They sink more into sinkers. It's in the name. But we'll get to that next week. Don't forget to subscribe to the show and on our YouTube page, the Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast, and email us your questions, jimbopodcast21@gmail.com. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Jim Tara. Maybe Getter. I might get a Getter account because Joe Rogan's on Getter, so I think I'm going to get a Getter account. Everybody's going to Getter. I have to get one.
Yes, so.
Yeah.
By the way, I listened to the Joe Rogan and Jewel. Remember the singer Jewel?
Yeah.
Podcast.
Yeah.
It's like 4 hours.
Yeah, she's very pretty. Yes.
Like, that was one of the best podcasts I've ever listened to. Like, that woman is so tough and inspirational. Like, you have to, when you're done listening to this podcast,
right? Because this is the best ever.
Number one on anything.
Right.
Listen to that Jewel episode on Joe Rogan. It is what that girl has gone through at every level of her life to succeed. I wish my kids were as tough as she was.
Yeah.
It's amazing. But anyway, and then you were going to ask me what's happening at the lab, I think, right?
I was, but I got to talk about what we're doing next week. Next week, we're doing Nick Castellanos as we wrap up our free agent. Well, we've got a couple more. We got Castellanos, and then I think we're doing Seager, and then we wrap it up, and then we take a break from doing some mechanical breakdowns, and then we circle back to it later. We got a lot. We got, we're zigzagging around. We got episode 100 coming up, and that'll be fun. So we got a lot coming up. On the Lab Epstein
will be a good one
podcast. Plus, you've got a lot coming up at the lab. See how I segue? I know how to do this.
No, I was just pulling it shade. Yeah, we're getting some crazy stuff. We've joined ventures with the Texas A&M engineering department and physics department. So we are like starting to study some really, really cool stuff with bats and hand pat. We're gonna kind of create some new, really geeky, ways to see if we can swing that bat a little bit harder. To use our body a little bit more, and combining all the technology we have there. So anyway, that's pretty cool. So if you're out at the lab and you see some scientists, people that don't look anything like us because they have giant brains and big futures, that's what they're doing. We're going to be running kind of a lot of tests and running some different things in hopes that maybe in a year or two we come out with maybe a better way to use our body, to hit balls hard and to maximize our ability. That's our goal, right? Always learning, never be satisfied with what you're currently doing.
I have to get in on that study because I'm very curious.
Yeah, it'll be fun. We had a great meeting with him yesterday, so I'm really excited.
All right, well, that's at the lab. Log on to the labbcs.com for more information, and of course epsteinhitting.com for online annotations and whatnot.
You bet.
That's all.
I had a new student coming in today. Online.
Good.
I just invited him to the academy. Signed up last night. Can't wait to see him. I'm going to give him a shout out. Zyak from Alabama. Pretty sure I know you too from a long time ago. Maybe you had an older brother, but yeah, hopefully they're listening.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll what his swing looks like. Maybe we'll put that on one of the episodes too.
Oh, we could do that. We could break down one of your students as well.
It'd be fun. We got plenty in there.
Well, yeah, and you already did one student before.
The best student I ever had.
Well, on that note, we'll talk to you next week, everybody. Take care.